heard him holler for help, and that's why I went over there to help him. He was shot between the eyes.
Your feet?
Right at my feet, right in front of me, Some guys would have him go to the bathroom and sitting down, and that's how the sniper would find out they were there, and they'd shoot him. The Germans that fired that shell had my name on it. That shell was coming in the middle of the field. I was there by myself. Looking back at it, the fact that I came back was a miracle. Only God let me come back.
Warning. The frontline testimony you're about to hear is, at times, extremely graphic. The realities of war are often difficult, but it's vitally important that these stories are told and the lessons are learned. Viewer discretion is advised.
A mortar shell that explodes right next to you, it's definitely, it's a large missile. And it explodes, it's got 1,000 pieces of shrapnel going everywhere. So he never had a chance. He was only maybe about 10, 15 foot away from me. I was very close. I heard him holler for help, and that's why I went over there to help him. I helped him get him out of the hole. A foxhole was like, 2 foot by 3 foot, maybe 3 foot deep. And he thought he was safe there. But it was rare that a mortar shell would land in a foxhole.
Directly.
But when it hits, the explosive is whoever's there is going to will not survive. His whole body was torn apart. Because when I picked him up, he was covered with blood. So he didn't survive, I know that. Because there's some wounds that are so horrific now. I was hit with a piece of shrapnel, but one little piece, probably about 3 inches big. It was red hot, hit me on the thigh here. And it gouged my leg, and it didn't. I was so flat on the ground here, I was laying like a pancake, and it just kind of glanced off my leg. I was lucky. Had I been standing up here, I would have been gone.
When you helped that wounded soldier, what first aid did you give him?
There's nothing I could do for him. I knew he was beyond help. Just the fact of what happened, I knew that. So other guys came and took the medics took him away.
But he was still alive at that point.
I think so. I didn't know for sure. I would say he died on the spot. He was so severely wounded, he could not have survived it. One day, it was September the 3rd, August the 3rd. Yeah, that was one of the busiest days of the war, and we had moved through there, and during the day there was tanks ahead of us. I heard the large tanks, and they were right in front of us, maybe about 200 foot away. A lot of times our Air Force would fly cover for us, and we moved so fast sometimes they didn't know how far we were. They would drop bombs in back of us. Okay, a lot of guys got killed by friendly fire.
Could you please tell me about your experiences engaging the Germans?
I never had a one-on-one contact with the Germans. I'd never seen a German eye to eye. I never killed a German. I shot at him. I threw hand grenades at him. No, I never had that misfortune of direct contact. Now, some of the other guys did. One of my buddies did. He approached the German with a bayonet, and the Germans hit him with a bayonet, and he killed the German. He stuck in the German, and he pulled the trigger. So some guys had much more than I did. I didn't have direct physical contact with any German. I never even seen him one-on-one. I see him at a distance. We were on high ground. It was like 300 foot high. We could see down in like a valley, and the Germans were down there walking around. You could see them, a little too far away to shoot at them. But one day we were there, and as we did that, we held up, and a guy came next to me here that kept hollering and shouting, keep going, keep going. I wondered who the hell it was. Guess who it was? It was a regimental commander. He was there with all his helmet and telling us to go get him, and he was a commander. He was a colonel, full colonel. And that's the only time I ever seen him up front. But he could have got killed real easy. But most of the officers were always in the rear. They would never be up in front. Hill 192 was the highest elevation in Normandy. It was so high, from the top of the hill you could see 25 or 30 miles in all directions. That means the Germans had the visibility on our troops and so forth. And so we had to capture that hill. They had it for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And when they captured, one of our regiments attacked it. There were 2 regiments, and they finally went up there and got to the top. The fight at Hill was for squads at a time, 12, 15 men at a time would attack it, and from all sides going up the hill. So it took about a week to capture the hill. The 23rd Infantry Regiment is the one that did capture the hill. So Hill 192 was a big part of World War II. Whoever had that hill had a visibility for 25 miles in all directions. And after the war, I would walk up that same hill and I thought to myself, wow, I mean, the visibility was like 25 miles in all directions. Hill 92 was a major victory for us.
You mentioned you had some experiences using hand grenades. Can you tell us about that?
The hand grenades I had, I always carried 2 or 3 in my pocket. And one day I heard some noise over, outside. I threw the hand grenade over the top. I didn't hear what happened. So I didn't use the hand grenade only 1 or 2 times.
That was over a hedgerow?
Over a hedgerow, yeah. A hedgerow is a large mound about maybe 3 foot high in all directions. It covers an acre of land. Okay. And every field is there because it keeps the cows in the pasture and so forth. So Normandy was what they call the hedgerow country. And every hedgerow behind that was a German. So it's very difficult to attack that way. Machine guns would be at every corner of the hedgerow, crisscross across the field. So a lot of times they would set up their guns and wait for the Americans to come in to ambush them if they could. So Germans were very clever. But they were also, I would say they're bad people, but they weren't nice. But we did observe the Geneva Convention. Prisoners were treated humanely. Theirs, and sometimes ours were not treated that way. But that was our psychology.
Some of the veterans who I've interviewed have mentioned there were times that they saw men not take prisoners.
There were a few renegades. Even some of our guys were not very nice. They'd take prisoners back, and instead of bringing them back, they'd kill them. I heard our guys do that. So that was rare. I mean, if they were caught, they would be court-martialed. Our own guys. We wouldn't tolerate that. But there's always a few bad apples with any organization.
Could you tell me, sir, how far were you from Moose when he was killed?
He was a big guy. They called him Moose. And to this day, I worship this man. I mean, I only knew him for 4 weeks. In 4 weeks, he's been in my life for 75 years. He was the most bravest guy I ever met. The day Moose was killed, I was right beside him, within about 2 feet, getting ready to replace him on his post. I had my rifle ready to go. He was been there I met him with a sergeant one day, and the sergeant says, he told Moose, he said, I see somebody out there, and the sergeant said, be careful. He was told to be careful because the German out there, I think on purpose, got his attention. And he was looking around to find out where they were. And finally, when he did spot them, they spotted him too, and they pulled the trigger. He was a big guy. I think I told you that. He was 6'4". Because of his size, that's why he's not here today.
What happened to the German who killed Moose?
I never did find out. In my own mind, I said, when I find him, I'm going to kill him. Okay, that was my mindset. I never did find him, but had I did, if I had found a German with a telescopic night rifle, I would have killed him. Because he killed my friend. I was a trained soldier. I did what I had to do. I was careful not to be overexpose myself or do something stupid. I obeyed my orders.
What are some of your other memories of you and him together?
Okay.
Or some other, yeah.
Okay. During peacetime, Moose was known to, on hikes, to carry the rifles of guys sometimes that dropped out. All the men in the company liked him. They knew him. He was the most popular guy in the platoon. And he was the biggest guy. And he was a good person. If anybody deserved to live through the war, it was Moose. And yet he died. And I did find out, to this day, I say a prayer for him every night. That's been 78 years ago.
You mentioned that Moose was a hero even before he was killed. What were some of the things that he did?
He was so forward. He was like a guy that was not afraid of anything. He was so big, he figured he'd be indispensable. It wasn't that way. I mean, some guys think they're invincible. And Moose was a big guy, but that's what got him in trouble, his size. He became a big target also. It's not how big you are or how strong you are. It just takes one bullet to take you out of it. And the biggest and the toughest guys can go first.
And so Moose was shot. Where was he shot?
He was shot between the eyes. It was one shot that got him, as I understand it, he was hit between the eyes.
And then he fell right at your feet.
Right at my feet, right in front of me,
What was that like for you?
That was devastating. I mean, at that time, I just turned 19. Here's my friend and he's dead. I thought, I was in shell shock. To lose a friend is like losing a family. He was like family. It's a picture of Moose there when he was alive, before he went over.
So, could you please tell me about some of the patrols you went on? Did you ever get in a firefight on the patrols?
This night we were on patrol. It was like in July. I don't remember what day it was. It was probably about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And we were told to go out on a combat patrol. Our mission was to capture a German and bring him back alive for interrogation. We wanted to find out what they were. So while we're out in the field, it's pitch black. You can't see anything, and you got to be so careful. And if I were to sneeze or something, give my positions away, I sneeze a lot, but somehow I didn't sneeze it. I got through that. We never did find any Germans that night, but we came back without any prisoners. So sometimes we were successful, and sometimes we were not.
Did you have some other experiences with German snipers?
No, that's the only time I noticed there was a sniper. And the only reason you were doing it is if you expose yourself. Some guys would go to the bathroom and sit down, and that's how the sniper would find out they were there, and they would shoot them. You'd have to be. They're up in trees. They could see them. They would have a tree position, and they could shoot down. So snipers are always there. Then there's booby traps also. Sometimes they leave something on the side. I was at a hill one day, and I see this shiny object on the side, and I thought, I wanted to grab it, and then I don't touch it, because Americans are inquisitive people. They see things that are strange and they want to touch it. So I knew better than that. I knew I had to be careful, and I was. I do nothing stupid. I just wanted to, I did I obeyed orders, and I did what I had to do. But I was part of the team. The youngest guy in the team, though. All the old guys thought I'm not going to last. Guess what? 2 months later, out of 12 guys, there was 9 guys were gone. There were only 3 of us left. I'm one of the 3. So I survived June, July, and August, and part of August. And after that, it was over.
Could you please tell me about any experiences you had with the German Luftwaffe?
Only on 1 or 2 occasions they would come by and they would strafe us, but it was rare. See, we had air control mostly by our pilots. Very few Germans. We did maybe 1 or 2. All the time I was there, I hear a plane, but I never fired at a plane. I never seen it. So we were frontline infantry, and we were kind of safe from that. They would have strikes in the rear. They'd have their dogfights with other planes. The German tank is a Tiger tank, they call it. It had so much armor on it. On a 1-to-1 contact, the German tanks could overcome our Shermans. They were stronger. They had more protective power. So their tanks were better than ours. Ours were smaller. We would get them from the side. We would attack them from the sides or the rear. We could knock them out. We could knock them out with bazookas. Now, I never had a bazooka, but a bazooka is a self-propelled weapon that can knock out a tank. If they came with you 100 feet or so, you can knock out that tank from the side, or have it knocked out of action.
But you don't recall seeing tanks at all in Normandy, or? I
heard them, but I didn't see them. We heard them moving around. They were very loud. See, Patton was on our right flank. He was like maybe 1 or 2 miles on the right hand side of us. It was a tank company. It was the 3rd Armored Division, which is one of the most famous. And their job was to attack in strength forward. They would try to outflank the Germans. Once they outflanked them, it means they could put a gap on them and cut them off from supplies and then overpower them. That was their psychology. I never met Patton personally. I was maybe 1 or 2 miles from him, maybe, you know. But he was a respected general. The guys liked him.
You could please describe the living conditions in combat.
Okay, a soldier in combat is there. He has a canteen. He has his little belt. He has a K rations and minimal, and they live in the field. You don't shave maybe once every 2 weeks. You can't get washed. You try to stay as clean as you can, but there's no way that you can do that unless you have a rest break. And after sometimes in combat, they would send you back to the rear for rehab. I never went back at all. I was always all the time I was there, I was on the front lines. When I say front lines, I mean, no one's ahead of us. We're yes.
You told us the story about Moose getting killed and the other soldier wounded by the mortar near you. Were there any other times that you saw Americans around you getting hit?
No. Guys are pretty careful. They would, they got hit because they were careless, maybe, or. But the ones who were just operational were part of the group.
Could you please tell me about the difficulty of fighting the Germans in the hedgerows? Where would they hide? Didn't you guys have to cross open fields in between?
They would kind of dig in holes in there and make little holes inside there. So on frontal, you could knock them out. They would hide pretty well. When you outflank them, then you hit them from the sides. So if you're going to kill any Germans, you gotta go around the sides and hit them, and attack them. On a front, you wouldn't get anywhere. If you did, their machine guns would take us out. Every corner had a machine gun. The Germans are very, they had fast-firing machine guns. They were very clever. They've been fighting the Russians for years, so we only had like 2 months of combat experience compared to their 5 years. See, they were smarter than we were, but we were very formidable. The 2nd Division was a tough outfit that was trained for fighting. They trained for 3 years. They were known as the most trained division the Army had. Overtrained, maybe. Amphibious, airborne, desert fighting, fighting with mountains and snow, skis, They were the best of the best. That's why they call them second to none. Not just in World War II, but to go back to the Korean War, they were there for 3 years in Korea. They had more casualties in that 3 years than any other division. The Chinese did not like the 2nd Division. They stayed away from us because we killed thousands of them.
Could you please describe what it's like to be under a German artillery bombardment?
It's devastating. Because you can't do much to defend on it. You just gotta hide the best way you can. If you have a foxhole, that's great. If you hear a shell coming in, you can hear it coming. I could tell just by the way it whistled where it was going to be, right or left. The sun was down, and it was quiet. Nothing was going on. There was no notice. There were no Germans, no nothing. I was by myself. But one German who was there on the other side of the field, probably about maybe 100 or 200 yards away, see me there. And he was able to zero in on my location, and he fired 4 times. 2 shots over my head, and the 3rd shot hit me in the foot. He had 3 chances to take me out. He fired high, then he fired low. I heard this pop. When a bullet goes by you, it makes a popping noise. You don't know you ever been shot at. So when it popped, I heard these 2 pops, either 2 or 3. And then the next one, all of a sudden, they hit on the foot. So I should have moved out of there right away, but I did. It only took him maybe about 20 seconds to get readjust. I didn't have time to move. The day I was hit, it was so familiar that I thought, oh, he's coming right at me. The Germans that fired that shell had my name on it. That shell was coming in the middle of the field. I was there by myself. There's nobody else there except me. I was their target of that artillery. 1 shell. And it hit 1.5 feet away from me. After I was hit, in about maybe 2 minutes, 3 more rounds came into the same place I was at, but I moved out of there. I was able to get up and run across the field. I stayed there maybe for about 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds. I knew I was hit. It was like a Charlie. When you hit the thigh, it's like a Charlie horse. Your leg is paralyzed, okay? Because the impact is like wham, you know. And then I knew I didn't know how bad it was because I couldn't see it. I went to the aid station. They bandaged me up, patched me up, gave me a new pair of pants.
Wasn't there something that, like, one of the pieces of shrapnel hit by your grenades, or?
Well, I had the grenades in my side pocket. A shrapnel cannot ignite a grenade. You got to pull the pin. The pin, if you don't pull the pin, the grenade is safe. So the shrapnel might have hit the grenade, but it couldn't explode it. So what happened? It was a glancing blow, probably. Besides the grenades I had in my pocket, I had a Bible in my pocket, a little Bible. I had letters in my pocket. I still have those same letters that are compressed today.
How severe was that injury in the thigh?
It dug into my leg and it cut it and gouged it. It was a medium wound. It wasn't severe. This is a piece of shrapnel that was picked up at the Battle of Bulge in December 1944. I was there in this area where this piece was. This is not the piece that hit me, but it's representative of a shell that explodes. It's got sharp, jagged edges on it, and it's red hot, and it's spinning like a knife. And if it hits you, it's going to tear you apart. The wound was right here, right in my thigh, right where your Charlie horse is. When I laid there, I was covered with dirt and smoke. Okay? I mean, when I say dirt, it was just all over me. That's how close it was. The shell's about that big. When that exploded, it hit the ground, and when it did that, the shrapnel hit me. One piece hit me here, and it smoke. It's terrifying. All I knew was that something bad happened. I had to get the hell out of there.
The shots were immediately one after another.
Yeah, they were successful. I felt this pain in my foot here. It was just, it was like 1,000 bees stung me. You know, it was that kind of a pain. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't tell, but I knew something bad happened. I was able to crawl to the side of the hedgerow and crawl over the top. And they took me away then on a Jeep. 2 guys took me back to the aid station, and then they put me on a Jeep to take me back to the first aid place, you know, to treat me. Then overnight, I was transferred from that to the stretcher on a C-47, and they flew me to England on a field hospital. And from that day on, I spent 4 months in the hospital. I was in a cast for like 2 months. My first airplane ride ever was on a stretcher on a C-47.
What was that like?
It was about maybe 20 or 30 minute ride over the, from France to England. It's probably maybe 30 minutes. We get to the field hospital, and that's wonderful. They got a cots that we stepped on, clean sheets. So for the next 2 weeks here, it was like going from the field to a clean place with sheets, and it was really nice. I mean, I liked that transformation. They were good to me. They took care of me well, you know. So my time in the hospital was the best time of my life.
What do you remember about some of the other injured soldiers?
Well, not really. I didn't speak to them at all. They were beside me. They had different kinds of wounds. Some had leg wounds, head wounds. You know, you can be shot anywhere.
In your foot injury, where did the bullet, what was the trajectory?
It was a very unusual wound. This is my foot over here. There's probably about a 6-inch gash at the bottom of my foot. It went through my toe, shot my toe off, and the bullet came out the middle of my foot. On a horizontal, not vertical, horizontal. I was facing you like this. You're the sniper. And your bullet went here and came out here. It was like a large cut in my foot.
But it totally took off your little toe?
It shut, yeah, they had to sew it back on.
Are you able to use it at all?
It's usable, you know. Today it's just a matter of sewing it back on. It's on crooked.
How long were you in hospital, sir?
I was there from August the 3rd until November maybe mid-November. Then they went off for rehab for a while, and they had a cast I walk around on, And the cast came off. I was able to put my shoe back on. But then after I had a shoe, I couldn't walk as well as any of the other guys did. So that was me. They reclassified me then from infantry to non-combatant. I was sent to the 66th Medical Depot in Liège, Belgium. That was the largest supply unit for the First Army. My job there was to watch over the POWs. We had German POWs working for us. I was overseeing the Germans, prisoners. I would take them on trips to back and forth. I mean, I was a guard, armed guard. I would have shot them if they tried to run away. I did that for about 6 months. They were both Germans and Italians. The worst guys were the Italians. They were lazy guys. They didn't do nothing. Germans would behave themselves. So when you're a prisoner of war, you do what they do what you tell them to do. Now, if we were the Germans and gave them a hard time, they'd probably shoot us. We were more tolerant. I was there from December of 1944 until the war was over in May of 1945. I was there for like 6 months. While I was there, we lived in a large school building. We had a nice place to live, and during that time, I lived there. I met a girl. I didn't tell you about that, but her name was Odette. I met her in January 1945. I was downtown shopping one day, and this girl was working by, and I said to her, "Mademoiselle, vous parlez anglais?" And she said, "Yes, I speak English." That means French. Do you speak English? And she said yes. And from that day on, her and I were together for 11 months. I would have married her. And one day, after Japan surrendered, war was over, and now it was like November of 1945, and they start shipping guys home based on their awards they have. The guys got a lot of points. The highest point guy went home first. So going back home after 2.5 years, I was glad to go. But my girlfriend was there. I had to say goodbye to her. I only had like 2 days to figure it out. And we didn't have time to do anything. I couldn't marry her, didn't have any money, didn't have any place to live, I mean, I would have married her. We get back home and I write to her. And she writes to my house, and she's going to come over and go to U of D college. And then it was in July of 1946, I guess it was. I didn't hear from her for maybe 5 months. I figured she found somebody else. In the meantime, I started dating another girl here. And within about 2 months, we were engaged, and then we were married. It only took about 3 months. When I found out what happened to her, she said she broke her wrist, she couldn't write, and then it was too late because I already had another girl. And they were both redheads. The redhead in Belgium, redhead I married. They're both beautiful. My wife was a good wife. We were married 61 years.
Did you ever wonder what if?
Yes, I did. So what happened, that's part of the story. I met a guy that lives there. He was a citizen in Belgium. I told him my story. He was on the, what do you call it, not the internet, but the shortwave radio. And he said, well, maybe give me your last address and I'll see if I can find her. I gave her the address and he finds her. He has a girl, and they one day they write to her and they give me her address. And then I went back on a reunion in Belgium. This was 1988. He gets on the telephone for me while I was there. And we talked about 5 minutes on the phone. And she said, yes, I remember you. And so I said, can I write? She said, yes. And I started to write to her. But I never heard from her. She died in 1992. I never did see her again. But I would have married her, and she was beautiful. I got her picture here somewhere. So anyway, my wife was jealous about it. They took all the pictures, they threw them all away. But something happened. She was sick. She must have got cancer or something. May the 5th, 1944, we got announced that Germans had surrendered. Okay, and the war was over. And then we were told that, and then that means that when the war is over, we can go back home again. And by that time, I was homesick. I was there 2.5 years, gone. I was eager to go back home. And that was nice. The homecoming was beautiful. See, I was the only son. Had I not come back now, my mother and father would have nobody there. When the war was over, I was delighted. I had enough points to get out of there real quick. And they told me, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'd be leaving on Saturday. So I went down and reported. I was shipped to Le Havre. From there, I was shipped across the Atlantic. We landed in New York. And from there, we were shipped to Indiana to be discharged from the Army. And that was in December of 1945. We get down to the station. I have my duffel bag. I got my uniform. I get on a streetcar in Detroit, and it takes me to the east side of Detroit, where my parents lived on a city called Copland. I get off the streetcar. It's probably about in the afternoon. I got about a half a mile to walk to my house, to where my parents were. I had my duffel bag. I walked on. My mother didn't expect me there. All of a sudden, I knock on the door, and she says, "Raymond!" And my father and mother were there. They were so glad I came back. And looking back at it, the fact that I came back was a miracle. Only God let me come back. Both times, the time I was hit by the shrapnel could have been gone. The sniper could have had me the first time. I could have been killed. Then, if I hadn't been killed then, I would have still got killed, but I had my platoon who were wiped out after I left them. After I told you that they were all killed, I would have been with them. So the cards were stacked against me. I mean, I was stacked that I could not come back, but I came back anyway. I beat all the odds. I survived a war that most guys are buried over there right now. I'm here. Just by luck. God let me come back. I mean, the only reason I could think about it, there's no other reason. And I raised a family. I mean, we had 4 kids, and we had nice houses, and I retired after 40 years, And with the VA now, the VA has been remarkable. I mean, they've been good to me, and I never applied for anything until just the last 5 years ago. I started getting compensation. So I didn't need it. I had a good job. I didn't need anything help from the VA.
Tell me about your readjustment, please.
I come back home in December of 1945. By that time, there was 5 other guys besides myself. We grew up together. One guy was in the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, and another Navy guy. So the year of 1946 was probably the best year of my life. We came back and we were all together. And I went back to Cass Tech to get my credits I needed for physics. I wanted to go to college, and get married. So the whole year of 46 was going to school and running around and chasing women. And we had dates all the time. We started dating tons of girls. We had more women than we ever thought we'd want because they were glad to see us. We came back. The girlfriend I had disappeared because she found somebody else. And I was just as happy about that. I mean, I didn't care about that. So the first year was a matter of doing nothing. When I say nothing, I didn't have to work. Well, I had a job part-time, but nothing. I bought a car and so forth. We went camping and stuff like that. And then at the end of the year, I meet this new lady. And I met her in November of 1947. We dated for about 2 weeks. After the 4th week, I went down to see her. We got engaged after the 5th week. And we were married on April the 10th, 1947. That's when we got married. We were married for 61 years. 60, that's all the time. We had 4 kids. We really had 6 of them, but we lost 2 of them. But the first time she was pregnant, and the babies came in 7 months. We expected 1 baby. We had 2 babies. We had a boy and a girl. After they were born, they only weighed 2 pounds apiece, about the size of a small loaf of bread. So when the babies came here, they were so little, the nurses in the hospital, they couldn't feed them. Their little mouths were so small, they had to use eyedroppers. Anyway, The babies lasted 3 days and they died. They both died. And we buried them in a cemetery. We didn't have any money then, but my parents helped us pay for the funeral. And then she got pregnant again. Then we had 4 kids in a row. We had a boy, we had a girl and a boy, and a girl and a boy. So we had 2 girls and 2 boys. And you met one of them here now.
That first time you came home after the war, did you have difficulties, loud noises? Did they bother you, nightmares?
No, I was just so glad to get back home. Nothing. The Army in my life was out forever. I didn't want to even think about the Army. I was out of it. I never want to even talk about it. So for 40 years, they were nothing. They came back here 40 years later when I went to the association. It was 1982 that I got involved with the association. And then I wind up being secretary-treasurer of the regiment. That's a big deal. We had 1,500 members. And I was in charge of everything.
Going back to your time in Normandy, and fighting, can you tell me about your experiences with the German buzz bombs, the rockets?
The war was still going on. It was 1945. And I was in Belgium now. And the Germans were shooting these buzz bombs. It's a 2,000-pound flying bomb with a motor on it. Okay. When it went overhead, it would go brrr, and all of a sudden it stopped. When it stopped, it came down. But it came down anywhere. It wasn't planned. It was a scare tactic by the Germans. I see. When they came down, it had a 2,000-pound bomb load on it. When it landed, it would devastate an apartment or whatever. But it might have landed in a field, or they weren't effective. It was a scare tactic. And then once the war was over, then they were gone.
How close did they get to you?
Maybe 5 miles. We heard the explosion.
And when you were in England, do you remember anything about the destruction or the bombing?
Well, I was in Birmingham, England. At that point, the Germans had bombed London. That was the biggest target. We were maybe 100 miles from that point. So we were in a safe area. There were no destruction.
What makes the infantry so unique? A lot of the veterans who I interview who were in the infantry, and they have a whole, bunch of medals. They always point to the combat infantry badge.
Of all my medals, I got the CBI. It's a combat infantry badge. That was my most notable type of decoration. I have Purple Hearts. I got 2 of those. I've got a Bronze Star. I've got that. Little stars on my ETO button. So I've had the 2 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star, and that was it. The combat infantry, that was special. I got that's something. Only very few guys get that. You have to be in combat to get that, and I got that. And then there's a French Foothold. You know what that is? It's on my jacket. That was given to the 9th Infantry Regiment and the 2nd Division in World War I. And from that day on, the regiment is still allowed to wear that French Foothold. That's a real prize. It's something special. It's on my jacket right now. You can take a picture of it if you want to do that.
Is that the original?
That's my original, yeah. That's called the Eisenhower jacket. July 26th. That's the date of the major battle called the
Operation Cobra.
Operation Cobra. It was a major attack by the entire American Army, the First Army, the Third Army, British Army. It was I call like breakout of Normandy. They were all together and they were strong, and the Germans knew it was coming. So from July the 26th on, that ended the Germans' occupation of, as we know, of Normandy. They went across France. They didn't touch Paris, and they wound up near Luxembourg. Okay, in a little town called Saint Vith. That's right on the German border, and that's where I went back the second time I went back to the little town, and then from that town I was shipped to Liège, Belgium. Liège is a large town in Belgium. It's right near the mountains. It's called the Ardennes. The Ardennes are part of the Battle of Bulge. It's a large forest area that divides Germany, France, and Belgium. And that's when the Germans attacked. The Battle of the Bulge came through right where our division was. We were stationed at a point in France for 2 months. It was a quiet sector. They pulled our division out on December the 10th of 45. When they pulled them out, they sent them north to up there where the Roer Dams were. They were guarded near Belgium. And a week after they pulled out, the Germans began the Battle of Bulge. And that was the biggest the biggest second battle of World War II. It was major.
Did you have any experiences fighting house to house or in some of the villages?
No, we didn't go through that. They were all small villages. By the time we got there, they were gone. So we went through the villages, and they had vacated the villages.
The Germans.
Yeah, the Germans. We didn't meet them.
Was it?
I had my BAR at the ready, my finger on the trigger. Had they popped out the window or something.
As you guys moved forward, do you remember coming across German, dead? Would they be left there?
We never seen those. They always took care of that. They buried their guys pretty fast. People that were killed were very quickly taken out unless they had a reason that they couldn't get at them. That wasn't the case.
Would you please tell me, just to backtrack for a minute about your childhood, talk to me a little bit more about the Depression. Wasn't there a time that you guys had no electricity and all that?
That was called the Great Depression of 1929. It lasted from 1929 till 1932. There was no electricity, and there was no heat. My father had a furnace that they put a wood-burning furnace in the basement, and that's how they heat the water. That's how my mother cooked here. So for 2 or 3 years, it was poverty that you wouldn't believe. Before that, they were wealthy. They had money. They had a big house in Grosse Pointe.
Can you tell us your memories of the race riot?
The race riot in Detroit began on July of 1943. Okay, it was the first race riot the United States ever had, and it was big. Okay, it happened in Belle Isle. Belle Isle was an island that people go to, and across that bridge is when it started. They started fighting, and as it got bigger and bigger, the downtown they were burning buildings down and all kinds of stuff. It got so bad that the governor had to call the president, which was President Roosevelt, and he asked for help to put down the riot. The president ordered the Army, a division in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and guess who they were? The 2nd Infantry Division. And the assignment was given to the 9th Infantry Regiment. One regiment was assigned to Detroit. A regiment has 3,000 men. So 3,000 guys come in trucks to Detroit. The minute they got here, within hours, the riot was over. All these people that were causing the trouble, they had machine guns set up, and they didn't dare do anything. The riot ended as quick as it started, even quicker. I was 18 years old then. I was 17. We graduated from high school. Our high school prom was interrupted because of the riot. We couldn't go downtown. So the guys come in trucks, okay? I see these guys with the engine head patch on their shoulder. And I said, oh, that was great. And the guys in 9th Infantry, they were there too, the 9th Infantry now, okay? The reason I mentioned the 9th, because when I get reassigned to the Army, when I was assigned to the Army, I joined the 9th Infantry. I told the guys, I said, I remember you guys came in when I was there. They said, yeah, I remember Detroit. So here I joined the same outfit that came to Detroit and put down the riot. Little did I know that when I was drafted, I'd wind up being part of these same guys, the same regiment, 9th Infantry. I became a part of I Company, 3rd Battalion, 9th Infantry. And I stayed with them until the war was over. It was June of 1943, and then in 1944, I joined the same guys from June in combat with the same guys that were in Detroit.
How did you hear about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Well, we were. It was back in 1941. I was in the 10th grade in high school, and that's how we heard about it. I was only 15 years old when it happened. It was a shock, kind of, that we're on war, and not knowing that I'd be there, but that's the way it was. 3 years later, I find myself in the war.
You told me that there was when you first joined the outfit, a gentleman killed. He shot himself cleaning the rifle, or did he shoot the guy next to him?
Somebody shot him. It was cleaning their rifle. It might have been somebody else.
It was, so he didn't. He wasn't cleaning his own rifle.
No. They were all cleaning their weapons, but the shot came from somewhere.
And you were right there?
And before I got there, it happened. And I was maybe 15 minutes away from that when it happened. They gave me his rifle, the guy that died. And the reason I had his rifle, when I went in, they gave me a Springfield bolt action rifle, which I didn't really want. The M1 is it has a magazine of 6 rounds in it. It can fire 6 rounds, So I got that kind of a weapon. I was trained with an M1 anyway during my training.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your training in Texas?
Yes.
And how did they take you from a kid and make you into a soldier?
I went in there. It's called Camp Walters, and it's an IRT. It's an Infantry Replacement Training Center, and everybody that goes through there is ready to join the regular Army as a replacement because they're trained in all the weapons. Mostly there were guys that were 18, 19, maybe 20, young guys, and everybody was trained to be a replacement infantryman, which I was. Because infantrymen, most guys had casualties, killed or wounded. So I went through it was a 19-month, maybe about 16-month basic training. And when I come out of there, I was ready to go. I was a soldier. I went in there as a young kid, doing nothing. I come out of there being a professional soldier who had the ability to attack the Germans, face them with a bayonet, maybe on my rifle. Hand-to-hand combat, we had that. We were trained how to use a mortar, not artillery, but just the mortar. 40 millimeter mortar is what we would use.
So could you please tell me, sir, about when you left home for the last time? You by this point were you the only son?
The only son,
but not the only child.
No, I was the only son. My other 2 siblings had died.
Tell me about the last time you saw your folks before you shipped overseas.
That was in December of 1943. I said goodbye to them, and of course, not knowing I'm going somewhere, but I didn't know I was going to the Pacific or the Atlantic. I mean, I didn't know I was going somewhere. I said goodbye, and that's all it was. When you go in the Army, you don't know when you're coming back, if you come back. A lot of guys never came back. They took me down to the camp. It was Camp Custard. That's where I came from. From there, they put us on trains going to Texas. Okay? They had Army trains that were, not boxcars, but passenger trains. You sit down. It was about a 2-day ride down there.
You went to the port of embarkation. You go across the Atlantic. Tell us about that journey, please.
Well, that was kind of scary. I mean, we were on a Liberty ship. That's a large troop transport ship. It's all men, all Army guys. And we're going across from New York to London or Ireland. The trip across was very hazardous because of the German submarines that were patrolling in the North Atlantic. Their job was to sink the ships going across. So our job had to be with a convoy maybe of 20 or 30 ships. They would zigzag, and then with them would be support units of the Navy, destroyers and things like that, to watch out for the Germans. So that was like about a 6-day ride. That was very scary because you could have sunk anytime. And they did sink a lot of ships. We go into Belfast Bay, and it's this beautiful harbor. It's green, and that's my first time I knew I was in Europe and where I was going to go. I still didn't know I was going to the 2nd Division until we embarked. And once we get on shore, I found out I was with the 2nd Division. Then I found out I was with the 9th Infantry, and I was assigned to a company. So from March until June, we trained with these guys for the D-Day operation. Okay, we were ready for it when it came. But we were put in a category of replacement category. So the first guys that were killed or wounded, we went in. That's why I went in on it was June the 12th was the day I went in. It was 5 days after they landed. I was in Bournemouth, England. It's a little town near Wales, I think it is. And we were at a hotel. And there were 40 of us guys there at the hotel. We were the replacement group to come across. We were the first guys coming over. We were the first group of replacements that came into the Army after D-Day.
And so how did you hear about the invasion? Did they put it on the radio?
Oh, yeah, we were notified, and we knew what was going on, We knew we were going to go somewhere, but we didn't know when. This picture is the D-Day +1. These are pictures of the 2nd Division walking up the hill past the German pillbox. And after they were there, they were assigned to take out snipers, clean up the area, and be prepared for the balance of the troops coming in. This is only one part of them here. There were 10,000 guys that would be. So it took them until the next day to get in there. It was the 7th and the 8th. By the 8th of June, they were ready to move out.
When you arrived, did you go the same way?
Same route. I walked up the same hill. I was in the same group of guys. I would join these same guys 5 days later. But my guys there were 40 of us that in the same walked up the same path. So I was able to find out later on that of the 40 guys that went in, I think 75% were casualties, and I knew every one of them. So the replacements are guys that went in, and if they lasted the whole war, they were lucky. When we were in combat, when you left the front lines, they give you a password. It could be, they would challenge you. You say, what's the password? That day it was Bathing Beauty. Or it could be Lone Ranger. 2 words. What's the password? What's the countersign? If you didn't know that, they would shoot you. Either you knew the password or you wouldn't get through.
When you look back at your time in action, are there any other stories that stick out being under German machine gun fire or artillery? I mean,
our positions were, as we moved up, the Germans would fire on us artillery, either behind us to knock out our supplies, Mostly it was, and then there were booby traps too. It was a German, so it was just a matter of their tanks didn't bother our tanks because they were separate. They were separate battles. So we had our problem was the German soldier, and we were the infantry. So it was 2 infantry units facing each other. That was it. That's the main part of the battle.
You mentioned that you remember it. You remember every minute, every hour, every day. Talk about that, please.
Well, when some big event comes up here, like the day Moose was killed, that was 78 years ago. That was there forever because I was part of that group there, And the only things I remember like that are when something tragic happens, when that happened. It didn't happen that many times because I didn't make a lot of friends over there. The guys you were with were just temporarily, didn't even know who they were. Didn't know their last names. They were like, a platoon has 40 guys in it. Of the 40 men, you didn't know who they were. They were just Joe, John, or whoever they were. They were part of the group. And everybody was kind of doing their job. They were asked to do, either go on patrols, which we did. They would assign us outpost duties, where to stay, where to go, when to leave, When you're in the Army, you do what they tell you. They tell you when to go, when to stay. They tell you when to eat, when you can clean up. If you go back for recreation, they tell you that, So you're just like a robot. when you're in the war, you remember things that happen during the day, a certain attacks at a certain time, the amount of artillery that's been expended. Other than that, you just get orders to get ready to go, get your pack ready to go and go. And so you go from place to place because every day we were moving up. And then the next thing they do is you had to have lunch. They give you C rations or K rations, maybe a hot meal sometimes, maybe not. I mean, being an infantryman is a very lonely and desolate job. It's no fun. You don't want to be there. It's the worst of the worst.
What advice do you want to give to future generations?
You hope it'll be peace in the world. You hope it'll be good people. The bad people will be gone. I mean, that's all you can do. And try to make a life for yourself. Rebuild your life. Start over. Get a job. Start a family.
People like Moose sacrificed their life.
Yes.
A lot of men were killed in World War II.
Yes.
The country we live in, the world we live in, is a very different country and world that you fought for.
Yes.
What can future generations do to make you feel like those sacrifices were worth it? You'd mentioned in another interview how you get disappointed when people disrespect the flag.
I think that's disgusting. Anybody that disrespects our flag should be punished, put in jail maybe. The American flag is a symbol. When I was over there and I went to the first cemetery, I look at in front of the cemetery is a large American flag, and in back of that flag there's 10,000 guys buried there. Okay, that flag represents those 10,000 guys, and every cemetery has a flag. So the flag became something special. To disregard the flag would be disloyal.